This week I've been dealing with street children and the issues they face whilst out on the street in the local town. And it's a difficult subject to talk about. These boys and girls are not only homeless and hungry, not only have no one to love them, nowhere to sleep, no food in their bellies, often covered in various different types of fungal infections and stuff because of lack of hygiene. Get involved with drugs, but unbelievably, there's even worse things happen to these boys and girls. This week I had to sit and listen to a child tell me that he had been raped by men in the town. It became such a frequent and regular occurrence that it was no longer abuse and rape to him, it was something that happens. So instead of them having to find him, he would go to where this was going on, to be abused. Because that was his physical contact in life, I guess. That was his routine. The young children who were hitting the streets, these men will then take younger boys to that boy, whilst he does things to that child. And thus the vicious cycle continues. And the only way to stop the cycle is to take the children out. And there's no need for these children to suffer like this. All they need is a place to go. If they had a place to go, somewhere safe, where these men can't get to them, they wouldn't have this problem. To the awareness of all that I am, it has become increasingly apparent to this human organism sitting here, transmitting and talking to all of you, that is ultimately a point of awareness, playing out its role in the story of mankind that we all are, that the vast majority of people are more interested in being educated or told about in a second-hand manner, or being entertained about topics that are supernatural, such as the angelic realm, the demonic realm, extraterrestrials, interdimensional forces. We are more comfortable to hear about these topics second-hand. And the reality of examining why that is that we are predominantly, most of us, wearing a slave suit, an image of self, which is a little box of human functionality that the hardware of our fallen nature has generated, a slave self, an enslavement program operating from thought and memory. When you therefore bring up certain topics, which are ultimately pathways to reveal the slave self, set us free from it, and allow us to embrace the path, which is profoundly exciting at times and certainly very interesting, where extraterrestrials or demonic presences or angelic presences are no longer a game of belief, but a manifestation in your life. They are a real presence within your life, the ability to address demons, the presence of angelic forces, witnessing interdimensional UAPs or UFOs and the beings that inhabit them. some positive, some negative, some following the path of Christ, some not. Harmonic attunement to the place where all of that is an experience of the human is the path of inner peace. And inner peace appears boring. And the vast majority who need to find that are the ones who immediately find these topics boring. Because the slave self, the slave suit they are wearing, has led them and made them feel when these topics come up, such as forgiveness, that it's a simple, dull, boring topic. Why do I need to hear that? There's no excitement in it. Not realizing that the exciting element of the expanded bandwidth of reality that we access requires that we understand these elements clearly and potently. For in reality, as I'll explain, if you can examine very simply yourself, and you have an ability within you to forgive, and you're not able to forgive certain parties, this space within you is evidence that the slave suit is currently running. For when it is not, and you are deprogrammed from that enslavement, the supernatural love and forgiveness of Christ is your nature, and it automatically manifests through you. And so these very subtle and important topics lead you to the topics that you are interested in. But reflecting inner peace into these truths is profoundly difficult. We have firewalls within us, things that say this is dull and boring, my slave suit will not be stimulated by it. Other elements within us that say, why would I need to learn about that? I already know everything there is to know, which is a firewall of arrogance that the slave suit has around it to stop you from self-investigating and inquiring what this suit is that you're clinging to, and being set free from it, and free from with it the energy extraction matrix of Satan and the knowledge of good and evil operating system that is dominating humanity, and keeping these topics in the realm of belief and analysis and so on and so forth, when in reality they should be a working part of a human's synchronized functionality whilst harmonically attuned with their Creator. But the majority of humanity who need that message, they won't be entertained by it in the short term. And so you just have to hope that you continue to fish for men, that the odd one will stay long enough with their awareness from the pull of the five senses, from the pull of the operating system of pleasure and fear that most are dominated by, and actually begin to expand and be liberated from this slave self that we are all wrestling with on a daily basis. From flesh to spirit, from the slave technology to freedom from it. This is why Buddha wants you to see through Maya and be enlightened. Freedom from the slave technology that makes you believe that the fallen world is where you are hailing from, and enlightenment to understand the truth of where you actually dwell from, and how that essence of truth of what you are, the loving awareness, has been brought into Maya. And so when it comes to a topic like forgiveness, let me show you slowly how this reveals the reality of our enslavement if explored, and at least it has in the human sitting here speaking. Forgiveness is a topic that comes up with the need for forgiveness from God, forgiveness for yourself, and forgiveness from others or by you for others. When it comes to forgiveness from the source of all creation, Christianity has dealt with that by saying you don't have to earn it. It is yours through the sheer weight of God's love that we call grace, and therefore your errors are forgiven. This is important because the energy extraction matrix needs the mind to be the master for you to be a power cell where energy can be extracted. For when the mind is the master, the soul feels a distance from Creator. And if mind continues to be your master, you will stay in a contorted, restricted frequency and the discomfort of that leaves you vulnerable to the temptations of the comfortable prison cell of worldly desire. And so, in this restricted state where mind is your master, we can sit heavy that the way I have been is surely unforgivable. And the reason we do that is we are wearing the image of the slave, which has been generated by the hardware, the slave suit, and it is incapable of understanding the depth of love and forgiveness that occurs when that slave suit is taken off and we know through unity the presence of God. And as such, people are left with this profound contracted weight that makes them feel that they can't possibly be forgiven by Creator. And the result of the mind tricking you into that, the slave self tricking you into that, the fallen self, is that your frequency stays distorted away from deservedness of love, righteousness, and holiness. And therefore, to bypass all of that, it is said through faith you accept your own righteousness, not because you are righteous and you are holy, but because Christ is holy. And in accepting that Christ is holy and you are forgiven through the weight of Christ's love and the forgiveness offered there, you here and now can move from a frequency of distortion, feeling unworthy, into one of deservedness, holiness, righteousness, and the power that is born from a human there. In that space where you feel holy and righteous, not because you are, but because of Christ, you enter a harmonic unity with Christ, with Creator, the source code programmer. And it is there where you see people talk to their problems with the power of God, for they can barely separate the power and presence of God from who they are. The slave system wants you not to be in harmonic resonance. It wants you out here where mind is your master. And when mind is your master, you tend to pray to God about your problem. When you are harmonically resonating with Creator, mind is your servant. It is not out of control. It's not capturing your awareness in this deceptive illusion that we all walk into. And there, as you feel so unified with Creator, you speak to the world and the problems of the world and the demons of the world with the power and authority of Creator as you feel like you are not distanced from it. You feel it in your cells. There's a difference, there's a confidence in that harmonic resonance than when you're outside of it and you're saying, God, please sort this out. It's, hey, God's with me. You get out of my way. And so this is the first trick of forgiveness, is that we must bypass the slave self telling you you don't deserve it. You are owed righteousness and holiness because Christ is that righteous and holiness that gave you the path into it, not that you as an image of self are. Now, outside of there, we move into the importance of forgiveness, for forgiveness will allow you to harmonically attune to your power instead of having you drift out. So if you've forgiven yourself or accepted that God has forgiven you, which tend to correlate as one, you will find more harmonic resonance. Forgiveness of yourself can be navigated with inquiry if you are not feeling it from the presence of Creator. But usually when you unify with Creator, away from the slave image and the slave suit, it's felt and it's able to be offered to yourself. However, if you inquire that you have incarnated in a fallen world, into a fallen body, into a system that has been hijacked and misled you away from your spiritual capacities and gifts and attunement to the voice of our Creator, you have been manipulated through a meticulous orchestrated deception. You should be able to logically reason that your errors, however much you must take responsibility for them, are absolutely forgivable. For it is akin to telling a small child who is learning and has done something wrong that they cannot be forgiven for their error. And so you must meander yourself through this slave program of unforgiveness into a space logically where you determine that you can forgive yourself, and of course Creator, through the weight of their love and grace, will forgive you also. But here's the fascinating part as well, is when it comes to forgiving others and yourself, there is a blockage, and the blockage is the slave suit. When you investigate with inquiry and awareness what forgiveness is and does, people will hold on to resentment for another human being for very long periods of time. And if you are to, as we witness, go around telling people you must forgive, and we teach within church you must have this holy power of forgiveness where you can love your enemies and forgive them, which is ultimately the teaching of Christianity, that you should love your enemy, that you should forgive your enemy, that you should endure all kinds of torment in the name of compassion, love and forgiveness, because you know this highest of high frequency is the only salvation of man. When you watch this, if you yourself today hold unforgiveness for people in your past or in your waking life, it is of no use to say to that person, forgive them. And the causality of it being no use is that they are wearing the slave suit. The hardware of our enslavement causes you to wear these uncomfortable suits, and they are an uncomfortable image of what you are. When those images are running, forgiveness and love without condition is inaccessible. The love that we are is not, and the love that we love one another with, is not something generated by your personality, your persona. It's not generated by the image of self based in memory and thought. It is an energy that flows through all of creation. And that love, that energy that flows through all of creation, is the love with which you are. That is what you are. It is the generous heart of all things pouring forth all creation, inclusive of infinite potential and free will. When that love is arriving through us, the mind of man, unlike a baby, where you see and feel the potency and clarity of that love, unlike a dog, where you get more of this unconditioned love and this presence, the mind takes a hold of that as the loving awareness that you are, and it starts to organize it, to refract it, to contort it, and says, I cannot love that person as I have a memory that this type of person hurt me in the past, or this particular person hurt me in the past, and so I refuse to allow my love to come forward for them. It is thought. It is purely thought and memory now that is grabbing the love with which you are and refracting it and conditioning it based on very unjust, usually, paradigms. You want people to attain a standard you yourself do not have the ability to attain of perfection before you warrant giving them your love. A baby who cannot harm us, we seem to access this reality I speak of. A puppy who cannot harm us, most of us can access this space where the love with which we love is the love we are. The mind is out of the way, and that energy pours forward and is seen in the demeanor and the animation of our intelligence in the presence of these beautiful, innocent beings who are yet to form such difficult structures with inside thought that make that love be refracted. Therefore, if you are unable to forgive another, don't begin to look at the slave self and work out how to get the slave self to forgive. It cannot. It can't. And this is a huge problem that we face, is that we lose track of reality for the words with which we have tried to organize reality. Words are not reality. Words point at reality. And this can happen in any setting. A setting which is close and dear to my own heart is that we have established a charity. Ultimately, that whole structure, that organization, is there to ensure that we can collectively be parents of these children who have nobody to be their parent. That means that as parents, some of us must manage the household, the care, the medical. Some of us must manage the budget. Others must manage the voice for the children to speak up on their behalf. Others, such as yourselves, must contribute from your hard work a little bit to be able to ensure the children have their resources for their food and their medicine. That whole structure is simply a group of human beings who have said we will be parents to children who don't have anybody. But within there, you have to hope that everybody remains awake to that reality of truth. That we are beings with a capacity for our intelligence to be moved and animated, and we have chosen through our love and compassion to help those children. Within the ranks, and it has happened over the years where we've had issues, etc., it arises that people take these structural roles that we've ultimately made words to point at. For instance, I have a role of CEO. If you take that structural role in the life of some people, they take that role and make it their identity. And when you make that your core identity, and you become amnesic of the truth behind it, we are people of compassion trying to help these children, that identity will begin to cause separation and conflict and begin to shake the very foundations of the body of Christ, which is all of man animated by right compassionate action and a connection to the living God here and now, and it will interfere with it. In our lives, I've seen that. People forget the role that has been purely created to unite us around helping those children. They cling to it and make it what they are. And from there they start defending and attacking from this creation of human thought that is only there to help steward God's love into manifestation. These roles are important to organize things, but they should never be the animator of intelligence, because their mind becomes master and there another slave self has appeared in the space where the Christ wishes to be made manifest. Even if it is a noble image, it can even be a religious image that the slave self generates. It can even be in the instance of serving children who are special needs and orphaned, that some people will allow a slave self, which is negative in its approach to things, to drive their decision making and animate their intelligence, voided from the presence of the Christ's love that allowed that position to be. This slave self is always wishing, no matter what is my point, to generate an image of what you are. And as such, if you are looking out at another and you can't forgive them, I guarantee you the reason you can't is nothing about self-improvement. You don't want to improve the slave self. You don't want to fine-tune this slave suit, which is restricting you into this little box where you can't even offer the love and forgiveness that you were born with the capacity to bring forward. The slave suit is being worn by those who can't forgive themselves and others. Investigate this. Look at it. If you wish to offer forgiveness and you can't, come back and look why. And it gets very simple but overly complicated for people. For people believe they are the thoughts and memories of the slave and of the slave suit that the fallen nature and the hardware of it has generated. And as such, they do not investigate the simplicity of the matter, that the reason you cannot forgive someone is that you are not letting go as awareness of a memory or a judgment. And these are simply thought. So if you take a human who cannot forgive and you delete their memory and you delete their thoughts, albeit briefly, be it for 5 minutes, which is where supernatural healing takes place, the opening within them of unrefracted, unresisted love of Christ, which is what you are, the love with which you love is the love you are, it's not generated by your anatomy or by your thought, there they will have no option, as they are bathed in an expansive love within their forgiveness is incorporated, to offer automatically, not even that there's a structure of self present to offer it, but love and forgiveness, and the shortest route to unity, tolerance, peace, inner peace, outer peace, will be embraced. You cannot forgive as the slave self is void of the passions and the love and the peace of God. So there's no use examining the slave self and saying, I must get this thing to forgive and to let go. You're trying to change the suit. You're trying to change the slave suit that you're wearing to be more palatable, to allow more of God's love in, to allow more of God's love out, to allow more of God's forgiveness in and out as well. The reality is that if you are able as awareness to become hyper aware of that suit, that slave self, it will go to sleep. And there, when you take off the suit, not that there is a one to take it off, but awareness dissolves the illusion of the suit, there, passing through the vessel and animating the intelligence of the vessel that you are, is that supernatural love that we originate from, and that the journey of flesh to spirit is ultimately the goal of. The religious world has gotten this lost. If religion cannot lead a man here and now to offer full love, forgiveness, compassion, tolerance, and patience, it has failed. That's the only causality, the only reason for it, is to ensure our intelligence is animated by a unified compassion. That we stay out of the knowledge of good and evil operating system where we end up in duality and conflict, and we separate from that space of consciousness where the mind is the master and the slave suit has you, and our intelligence can be animated by a vast pool of stillness, compassion, grace, and love. This is the overcoming of the enslavement of what you are. And when a human examines what it is that's stopping them from forgiving, and with it keeping them out of harmonic resonance with their true power and that greater bandwidth of functionality that a human being has, but has been contorted and enslaved and restricted into this tiny box, that human being will see that that which is not allowing forgiveness to come forward cannot be fine-tuned, it needs to be put down. But the problem is that many will take the slave self and try to put down the slave self with it. And it is the weight of surrender, which can only occur not by physically going through a process to surrender, but whereby naturally through awareness and brokenness, as it were, the slave self fades, it disappears, it silences naturally of its own accord. And when that happens, you would effortlessly be able to see that the reason you cannot forgive from the slave self is that you are wearing the slave suit, and it allows the mind to be master, and so it will tell you, I cannot forgive that person because they hurt me, and I'm hanging on to that memory. I'm hanging on to that image, and I'm doing so to protect my vulnerability from it occurring again. And yet, therefore, we cannot heal. And so if you put down the thought, which is all it is, it's just a thought, it's just a memory, blocking you from having the expansive power of Christ's love. And that's why you're enslaved to the knowledge of good and evil operating system. Because your thoughts and your memories keep grabbing that want for that love to expand through you and contorting it and refracting it into these little boxes. And that is the competition between the fallen ones and the Creator. The fallen ones say, I can make the nature of your children forget their expansive loving nature and contract it into this energy extraction matrix, and then they will even sell me that energy by chasing after pleasure, by operating from pleasure and fear alone. I will make my world such a potent illusion, Maya, the fallen world, that your children will offer me their energy to try and get some peace from the struggle that they are enduring once incarnated here. And when you put down that slave suit, forgiveness comes, love comes, humility, as in you are lovingly aware of all things and just await divine revelation to animate your intelligence and life. Analysis is silenced, and with its separation, for there's no analyzer and topic of analysis anymore, and there you enter harmonic resonance, harmonic attunement with all that is in the Creator of it. And there your bandwidth expands. There you can decode more of consciousness than you could before, and there you have the assistance of the angelic realm, and you talk with them, you meet them, they guide you, they help you, all from Creator. Your discernment is there. And there you have the affliction of the demonic realm, and you are able to address them as your frequency is too heavy a weight for them to bear. And there you see these interdimensional craft and beings, extraterrestrials, whatever you want to call them, who function on a frequency way higher than the slave suit which has trapped us into that small paradigm of functionality. All of these topics are not dull and boring. They are your freedom. They are your liberation into a world that you will barely recognize. A world where you have the joy and excitement of being visited by extraterrestrials who follow the Christic path, by interdimensional beings that you are having dominion over and able to remove from people who are suffering. There, everything Yeshua promised comes true. For these signs and wonders will follow those that believe. They will cast out demons, they will speak in a new tongue. But spiritual rebirth is conditional that you put down the slave self. And the slave self can't put itself down. Only being lovingly aware of all thought, impulse of flesh, and memory will eventually allow the slave suit hardware to fade away and you to be liberated from that enslavement. I love you all. I hope you're well. God bless, guys.